the next one is second page, third page, and then the next to the last page and one next to that on the back. So you can pull this apart, and it keeps on doing that until you get to the middle, and the middle page in one of these documents that you see is one page. Like this is all one page, and so that's the only one that's actually going to be look like a full spread in your document. So that's called saddle stitching, and depending on how you're going to bind it, you might need to adjust your document. Like if you're going to do perfect binding, you can just leave it as is, no big deal. If you're going to do saddle stitching, sometimes the printers do this themselves. They like to do it on their own. But if you need to do it, then you have to reorder your pages in your PDF or your document so that whenever they put them through the press, that basically you need your document instead of your page, like say it's on spreads, you have page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Instead of page 1, 2, 3, 4, it needs to be last page first, then front page, and then on the next spread, this inside front cover, inside back cover, and then it goes back and forth. There's a pattern to it. Like I can reorganize these without even thinking about it now, but the first time I had to do it, I just my brain overloaded. So that's pretty. Those are the two main types of binding that I want to talk about. So once you have those things together, then you're pretty much ready to send your file to press. Okay, that's that. So now let's talk about the printing process a little bit. There are two main kinds of printing that we're going to talk about. Offset lithography is that's the main printing that you see professionally. That's the 4-color press. It's a huge press. I don't know if you've ever been to a print shop. If this was an actual physical class, we'd probably go on a field trip to a print shop just so you could see it. It's really cool to see how these things work and how fast they are able to print stuff. Anyway, offset lithography is the main printing technique that's been used for years and years and years. I mean, the printing press was invented in 1400s by Johannes Gutenberg press, and this is not really the same thing. Offset lithography was invented. Oh gosh, I don't even know when. But since it's been invented, it really hasn't changed that much. I mean, the technology has changed, but the actual process is still pretty much the same. So offset lithography is the main printing technique. The other kind is called digital printing, and that's, guess what? It's digital. And that's become more and more popular just because it's a little bit easier and cheaper. I saw a figure in 2005, digital printing still only accounted for 9% of worldwide printing, which is approximately 45 trillion pages a year. So that was 4 years ago. Now I'd say it's probably a good deal more than that, maybe 20, 25%. But you never know. So let's talk about offset lithography a little bit. And this is where that video that I attached is going to come in really handy, because that actually shows what a printing press looks like, how the process works. But I'm going to try to describe it real quick here. But you need to look at that video because there's going to be questions about it. Okay, offset lithography. It's called that way. Offset is because you offset the image from something to something else. Lithography is a process that involves the repulsion of oil and water. Oil, in this case, oil-based inks and water, which kind of helps determine where the ink is going to go on the sheet, on the page. So that's why it's called offset lithography. The way it works is, if you've ever seen a printing press, it's a huge, I'm talking like, longer than a limousine, like this huge, big machine with a couple different big mountains that stick out of it, usually anywhere between 4 and 6 for the different plates. And what you do is they create these metal plates that have the images that from your document on it. And it's broken down into four different plates, generally. And that's because we're printing 4-color. So if you're doing a standard 4-color job, there's going to be 4 plates. There's going to be a cyan plate, a magenta plate, a yellow plate, and a black plate. And the paper is going to run through each one of these plates separately. So the first one is going to put all the cyan on the sheet. Then it's going to come through the magenta, and all the magenta is going to be put on the sheet. Then yellow ink, and then the black ink. And what's called the registration is, is very precise, because these pages have to line up exactly, or the image is going to look really weird. Like you might have seen something like that where you see a little ring of magenta or yellow around an image, and that's because the registration was off. So that's an art in and of itself. But anyway, so in this press, these plates go around these rollers, okay, and then water is shot on these plates and the ink sticks to the right areas. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's magnetic or, that's something I don't know. I'm not an expert on printing, so I'm not sure about that. But basically, the aluminum plates rub the ink onto these rubber rollers. And the rubber rollers, in turn, rub them onto the paper that's coming through. Whoops. I don't know. My computer just went to sleep. I don't know if that messed up. Anyway, the rubber rollers put it onto the sheets of paper that are coming through really fast. I think between 5,000 and 11,000 sheets an hour. So it's coming through there real quick. And that's how they do it. And there are these big sheets of paper that are then trimmed down. Like usually, if you have a job, you might have anywhere between 5 and 10 pages on one sheet of paper, and then it's trimmed and cut and folded and all that stuff. And it's all automatic with printing press. It's really cool to see something come off and then become, folded and stapled, and maybe there's a die cut. We'll talk about that. Anyway, so that's a typical 4-color job. If you have other colors, like let's say you have a spot color, that's going to be a 5th color. So that's going to be a 5th plate that they have to create. And it's going to have to run through a press again. Usually, the big presses now have, 6 or 7 plate areas, so they can run it through one time. They would have to run it through the 4-color and then take the plate off, put the different plate on, and run it through again. And because of that, using spot colors is more expensive than just traditional CMYK printing. So if you have a spot color, that's a whole other plate. And remember, we talked about spot colors. Those are mixed colors that actually come from a company called Pantone, generally, that are precisely mixed pigments that are the same, that are very consistent throughout. With CMYK, you're always going to have a little bit of color shift just based on who's printing it, and all those different things. Maybe it's an old press, something like that. But Pantone colors are consistent, and that's really the only way you can guarantee the same exact consistent color. And but there's still a little bit of shift from what you see on your monitor to what's going to be actually printed, because that's additive color and subtractive color. We talked about that. Additive color is RGB, subtractive color is CMYK. So what I have here, this is called, let's see if you can see it, a Pantone Color Bridge book, okay? And I use this a lot in my job. What this is a listing of all the Pantone colors that they have. Well, this in the coated ink variety. This is all the Pantone colors that they have. And these are really expensive, by the way. I got my boss to buy it for me. But anyway, I'm going to hold this up here so you can see it. For example, let's look at one of these pages, okay? And you can see it's got the Pantone. It says Pantone. It's got the number. That's the actual number of the color, and that's what it looks like. And then it goes through, the whole spectrum of colors. This is called a color bridge because what it does is it shows you the Pantone color, which is over on this side. It's hard doing backwards. It shows you the Pantone color over on this side, and then over here is the CMYK breakdown of that color. And that's what it's going to look like if it's printed 4-color process. And some of these are very, very close. Others, let's see if I can find one that's not so good. Blue is always a very hard color to reproduce. So let's find a blue. I don't know if you'll be able to see this very well or not. Let's see. Okay, for instance, this one. This is the Pantone color. It's very rich blue. And this one is the CMYK. And it's a little duller, it's a little bit off. It's not the same. So that's why, spot colors are important, but they're also expensive. But this is going to show you It's a very handy tool. These are going to show you exactly